Donald Trump. He's soaking up all of the headlines in the presidential race, but nobody really knows much about what he believes. Is there a right way to see Trump from the perspective of a wise, responsible, self-directed investor? There sure is. I'm Bryan Ellis. I'll tell you that perspective right now in episode number 130.
You're listening to Self-Directed Investor Radio, America's only podcast exclusively for affluent, self-directed investors, where each day of the week you receive innovative investment strategy and deadly accurate market analysis that's untainted by Wall Street and unblemished by government propaganda, all in 7 minutes or less. Coming to you now from iTunes, Stitcher, and SDIRadio.com, here's your host, Bryan Ellis.
Hello, SDI Nation. It's so good to be back in the saddle. For the last 2 weeks, I've struggled with a combination of pneumonia and bronchitis, and it has been miserable. I'm not at 100% yet, probably around 85% or so, but I'll give every bit of that I have to making this an unforgettable experience for you as you listen to this, the podcast of record for savvy, self-directed investors. Thank you for the rather overwhelming response to the last episode, number 129, available at sdiradio.com/129, where I encouraged you to view bankruptcy not as a financial escape hatch, but as a standard of financial preparedness. My theory is this. Bankruptcy is the one situation in which a person must absolutely come clean and disclose absolutely everything about their financial situation. Privacy doesn't matter. Everything's on the line and known by all parties. So if in that situation, your financial affairs can be arranged in advance in a way that's both totally in compliance with the law and capable of making sure that your assets aren't lost even if you went through bankruptcy, then in my humble but undeniably accurate opinion, that is the gold standard of asset protection. So talk with your own attorney about getting that kind of protection established, because it's important you do so long before you're faced with legal or creditor difficulty. By the time you're already in the middle of the fire, it could be too late. If you don't have an attorney you trust on those issues, go back and listen to sdiradio.com/129 for a referral. So what about Donald Trump? Let's get the partisan issue out of the way first. Donald Trump may be running as a Republican, but let me tell you without question, Trump is not a Republican. He's not a Democrat. He is the founding and the sole member of the Trump party, and he's doubtlessly running for president to advance his own interests. So for those of you who are tempted to tune out just because I'm talking about a guy who's running under the Republican label, let's just leave the small-mindedness at the door, shall we? Polling already indicates that Trump has a substantial interest level across party and ethnic lines, and since the guy has a commanding lead, it makes sense for you and I to know a thing or two about him, since he's clearly a serious candidate who could become the next president of the United States. Well, here's a spoiler alert. I'm not going to tell you whether I support Trump. I don't know yet. But what we can analyze are his ideals and determine whether his approach is compatible with our needs as self-directed investors. Now, a moment ago, I commented to you that Trump isn't Republican or Democrat, but is pursuing his own interests. How's that rub you? My suspicion is that for many people, that may feel like a negative comment, but for the more enlightened among us, it may actually be a positive point of differentiation. Here's my analysis of Trump. First, I respect what he's done in business. He does not have a perfect record by any means, but overall he's been wildly successful, to the point that his name is plastered all over opulent resorts all over the world, and to the point that you and I are discussing him as a serious presidential contender. Some people are critical of him because of his history with bankruptcy, but that's not entirely reasonable. Some of his companies have gone through bankruptcy, but he's personally never done so. And for those of you who view with suspicion the ability to go through bankruptcy and still come out on the other side as a billionaire, just think back to a few minutes ago on this very show when you were shaking your head in agreement thinking, wow, wouldn't it be great if my assets were insulated even from bankruptcy? That's what Trump's done, and that's what you should do too. Second, I respect his clarity of communication and complete disregard for political correctness. For example, before Trump, nobody was talking with any strength about the threat represented by illegal immigration. Everybody was too afraid of being called a racist. Trump's been called a racist as a result too, but he simply doesn't care. He knows what he's saying is true, and it resonates in America. Frankly, the millions of legal immigrants in this country know he's right too, and polling clearly shows that Trump has an unprecedented level of support among legal Hispanic immigrants. It's really astounding. You've doubtlessly heard the phrase about who's going to be the bigger man. Well, it's patently clear that Trump is perceived broadly as the bigger man, and he's leveraging that rather expertly. Third, I'm in awe of and very concerned by the fact that Trump defaults so quickly to personal attacks. That's worked really well for him for a very long time. You may recall the famous interview Trump did with Larry King back in 1989 when Trump started the interview by telling King how bad his breath was, to which King replied, "Now that's how you get the edge." Trump's known as a tough negotiator and is willing to use any edge to increase his own, and I suspect that's worked beautifully for him in negotiations. But as a presidential candidate, there's got to be a little more than that. Truth be told, I think there's a lot more to him than that, but I am concerned that he defaults to that too much. Finally, I'm concerned we don't really know what Trump intends to be from a policy perspective other than a few key issues he's discussed, including immigration. But my friends, I've got to tell you, part of me sees that as a positive. I don't get the sense that Trump has any interest in being bogged down in the way things have always been done. I think he actually does believe in his campaign moniker, to make America great again. And while there's room for Trump to be a dangerous figure as president, I think it's possible, I'm not yet certain, but it's possible that Trump's interest really is to make America great again. And if that's his intent, if he proves to me that's what he really wants to accomplish, I'm going to have difficulty opposing him. Now, I want to reiterate, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm really not. But I'm open to being one. He makes me nervous, but he also makes me feel hopeful. Do you know why I'm speaking to you like this about him? It's simple, really. Trump is offering the one thing that everybody cries out for in one manner or another. That one thing is leadership. Steel-spined, unequivocal leadership. The kind of leadership that says, the thing that's impossible without me is totally achievable with me. I don't know if Trump as president can ever match Trump as candidate, but with our alternatives, one's really tempted to give him a try. And my friends, this is neither a political show nor a political episode. I want you to back up just a bit and look at this from the point of view of your interests as a self-directed investor. To a huge extent, your fortunes and my fortunes are tied up directly with the fortunes of this country. The value of our real estate, the value of our currency, the value of our stock market, all of these things are, much to my chagrin, and I know to yours as well, substantially and inexorably tied to the policy that comes out of Washington, D.C. And in recent decades, America has declined in its role as a world economic and military power. America is no longer viewed as the obvious default choice for investors worldwide. And why? There's been no steel-spined leadership. There's not been anyone for 30 years or more who dared to represent America as a shining city on a hill. There's been no one recently who has even made a credible effort to tell the world that the way we do things in America is different, is better, and it's all because of one thing: freedom. Can Trump make this happen? I don't know. I hope somebody can, but one thing I know for sure, not even one other candidate is suggesting that they'll really even try to do so. But Trump is looming large with one and only one real promise: to make America great again. That's impossible to ignore, particularly for wise, self-directed investors. So my friends, invest wisely today and live well forever.
Thank you for listening to Self-Directed Investor Radio with Bryan Ellis. Don't miss a single episode. Be sure to subscribe to Self-Directed Investor Radio right now on iTunes, on Stitcher, and at SDIRadio.com. Your feedback is always welcomed via email at feedback@SDIRadio.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only and is not intended as legal or professional advice for your situation. Content is the property of the Self-Directed Investor Society.